Hey guys, it's Damien here, and I wanted to go through some of the tail boom designs. This is the original aluminum tail boom that Goose Guy has made, and I've made multiple designs trying to replicate and improve the rigidity of the tail boom. It won't be as perfect as the original aluminum tail boom, but with 3D printing, I figured I'd give it a shot. So the first design that I ended up going with is the one that's currently released on Printables and Thingiverse. It has a wall thickness of 1.25 millimeters, as well as the horizontal bar that the vertical stabilizer screws go into, and that's about 3 millimeters thick. So you could tell, I don't have a device to be able to measure the forces, but you could tell that this tends to bend quite a bit. So it does the job, but I'm trying to improve on the design so much that you could do some extreme 3D, as they call it, with the helicopter, some aggressive acrobatics, but with the flex in the tail boom, I figured I'd try to push it and come up with a couple other designs. So that was the first design. The second one, I ended up going with a I-beam design, which actually improved on rigidity compared to the last one. But when I was trying to feed in the tail motor cables through the boom itself, the space between the I-beam that's going across the center of the tube itself and the wall was just too thin. So I ended up doing another test sprint, a short, small test sprint, and I'll probably try to show you guys some close-up shots of all these tail booms. But I decreased the wall, the inner I-beam, and the space between the I-beam design and the outer wall was still too small after decreasing the wall thickness inside the tail boom. So I realized that the further I ended up going as far as decreasing the I-beam thickness, it would just not do, and it wouldn't provide enough rigidity in the tail boom. So I ended up scrapping this idea, and I ended up going with trying to make the tail boom thicker. So with this design, the tail boom ended up going from a 1.25 millimeter thickness to a 1.8, and that definitely increased the strength of the boom. You could tell that there's definitely some flex, but it's definitely a lot more rigid compared to the original design that I had. And I wanted to take it a step further just to see if I could make it, a little bit more rigid. So I ended up going as far as 2 millimeters in thickness. So between the 2 millimeter thick tail boom, 3D printed tail boom, and the 1.8 millimeter thick tail boom, I ended up also decreasing the horizontal bar that goes across from 3 millimeters to, I believe it was 2.5. And because I was trying to have some space for the tail motor cables to go through the tail boom, because I'm trying to keep the perimeters and the shape on the outside of the tail boom the same, and I'm increasing the wall thickness by decreasing the inner diameter of the tube itself. So it actually ended up, it's pretty rigid. I'm trying to flex this boom as much as I'm flexing the rest of these booms. Let's see if I could. Yep, I don't want to go any further, but that's quite rigid. But the issue with a 2 millimeter tail boom is the fact that, as I've mentioned before, the cables were struggling to go through the tail boom. So what I ended up doing is I opened up the area on the bottom of the tail boom to a thickness of about 1.25 millimeters, similar to the original design, because that's where the cables of the tail motor were very easy to slide in and out of the tail boom. So I ended up pretty much removing some material from the end of the tail boom to past the horizontal bar that's in the tail boom, so it kind of feeds through and up and over that lip within the tail boom, but then you still have the rigidity across the entire tail boom itself. So I actually have the 2mm tail boom design currently on my Goose Guy, which it fit quite well without any issue, and I'm hoping to do some test flights because currently I am extremely confident with the airframe. It's quite rigid, so I can start pushing this helicopter more and more compared to the time when I was flying with an airframe like this that doesn't have any sort of rigidity at all. And it just, with PLA blades, which was not a smart idea, but I figured I'd try it anyway. But now I have an extremely rigid airframe, better landing skids, as well as a more of a rigid tail boom. So the flex is going to be substantially less compared to the original tail boom. The only thing that I'm actually sacrificing here is the weight. I'm starting to realize that this helicopter is starting to increase in weight. The original aluminum tail boom is about 10 grams. My original design that flexes quite a bit is about, I believe, the same. It's about 10 to 12 grams, but I'm pretty sure the original design is about 10 grams. And then this 2mm wall thick tail boom has gone from a 10 gram weight tail boom to an 18 gram tail boom. So it's almost double the weight, which in an airframe, or I'm sorry, in a helicopter or any sort of aircraft, you want to be decreasing the weight. But since we're working with plastic here, there's only so much I can work with. I'm sure there's multiple ways of designing these types of parts with specific geometries that will not only decrease the weight, but also improve on rigidity and performance. But I don't have that type of knowledge, and I'm just trying to work with the knowledge that I currently have to provide you guys the best 3D printed parts. So right now I'm just working with a 2mm thick wall thick tail boom at the moment, and that's what I'll be testing with for my next test flight. And I think the only last thing is improving the flex on the vertical stabilizer. I'll try to make a separate video on that, but that's slowly being improved. But that is currently the update. Once I improve this tail boom enough where I'm pretty confident in how it performs, I'll probably post it on Thingiverse and Printables. That's where I've been posting all my designs, and they're currently absolutely free. So right now, that is the setup with the newest airframe. I think this airframe is a version 3.18 that's on Thingiverse and Printables. And currently the upgraded landing skids, the tail boom, and the vertical stabilizer are not on there just yet, just because I'd like to finalize and perfect the design before I release anything. So if you guys have any comments or ideas and thoughts on how I can improve this helicopter, ways I could maybe change the design, if maybe there's a better way of designing the airframe, I've tried to make it as simple as possible, but that's where we're at. So if you guys like this type of content, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.